Elias had always lived at the edge of human space, on a planet that few cared to visit. The sky was a pale gray, and the winds carried dust that stung like needles. Broken ruins lay scattered across the plains, remnants of a civilization long gone. For Elias, this wasteland was home, a lonely home, but home nonetheless. Every morning he checked his supplies, dried food, filtered water, and the small stash of tools he had scavenged from nearby ruins. Most days passed without excitement, but today, something felt different. As he walked along the cracked surface of what had once been a city street, he noticed movement in a nearby cave. Shadows shifted, and for a moment he thought it was just his imagination. Then a soft whimper reached his ears. Elias froze. The sound was faint, almost desperate. He crouched behind a crumbling wall and peered toward the cave. Inside, he saw two figures huddled together. One was taller, with a slender alien frame, and the other was smaller, clearly a child. Their skin shimmered faintly in the dim light, pale blue with streaks of silver. They were covered in dirt and scratches. Elias's heart tightened. The human instinct to help, to reach out, was stronger than his fear. He stepped cautiously toward the cave, keeping his hands visible and empty. "Hello," he said softly. "I don't mean to hurt you. I have food and water." The taller one, clearly the mother, froze, her large silver eyes locking onto him. She made a low clicking sound, and the child pressed close to her. Elias could see the fear in their eyes, the kind of fear that comes from being hunted. "I'm not here to fight," he said again. He slowly opened his backpack, revealing a bundle of rations. "I have food. You look hungry." The mother hesitated. She glanced at the child and then back at Elias. After a long pause, she stepped forward cautiously, her movements graceful yet tense. Elias set the food down on the ground at a safe distance and retreated a few steps. The child, curious but wary, crept forward first. Her small fingers reached out to touch the food, then pulled back quickly. The mother nudged her gently, encouraging her. Finally, the child picked up a piece and tasted it. Her eyes lit up. Elias felt a warmth in his chest he hadn't felt in years. "You can trust me," Elias said softly. "I'm not going anywhere." The mother nodded slightly, though her eyes remained alert. She didn't speak in words humans could understand, but her gestures were clear enough. She motioned for Elias to wait while she watched the child eat. Elias sat down on a nearby rock, careful not to make sudden movements. He watched them, fascinated. The child, who must have been no more than 6, finished the food quickly and looked up at Elias with what seemed like a smile. The mother followed her gaze, and for the first time, there was something like relief in her eyes. Over the next hour, Elias shared more of his supplies. He gave them water and small medical patches for the scratches on their skin. The mother accepted them, though she examined everything carefully before using it. Elias realized that they had been alone in this wasteland for some time, surviving as best they could. As the sun dipped lower in the gray sky, Elias knew he had to return to his outpost. "I'll come back tomorrow," he said. "I'll bring more food." The mother tilted her head, considering his words. She made a soft sound that he took as acknowledgement. The child waved shyly before curling up next to her mother. Elias gave them one last nod and walked back across the dusty plains, the wind whispering around him. That night, Elias lay in his small bunk, thinking about the mother and child. He had seen many strange things in his life, but nothing like this. Aliens were common enough in human space, but they usually lived in cities, in controlled environments. Seeing them here, vulnerable and alone, stirred something deep within him. By morning, Elias had made a decision. He packed more supplies than usual, extra rations, water, and a few tools. He also brought a small blanket, realizing that the cave offered little warmth against the biting wind. When he returned to the cave, the mother and child were still there. The mother's eyes brightened slightly at his approach. Elias set down the supplies and stepped back. This time, the child ran forward to greet him, her tiny hands brushing against his arm in a gesture of trust. "You're safe here," Elias said, "I won't leave you." Days turned into weeks and a routine formed. Every morning, Elias collected what he could from the ruins: food, water, sometimes a small toy or trinket for the child. Each day he brought it to the cave. The mother, Leora, began to communicate more with gestures, teaching Elias a few signs that seemed important. The child, Mina, grew bolder, laughing softly and following him around the cave's entrance. Through these small daily interactions, Elias began to see the depth of their resilience. Leora taught Mina how to search for clean water and how to hide from danger. Elias watched them carefully, amazed by their intelligence and adaptability. Mina often mimicked his movements, learning quickly. Elias found himself laughing more than he had in years, yet danger was never far. Raiders and scavengers sometimes passed through the ruins looking for easy prey. Elias learned to keep watch while the mother and child rested. He created small alarms using scraps of metal and wire to warn them if anyone approached. He became their silent protector, and slowly they began to trust him completely. One evening, as the wind howled across the plains, Elias sat with Leora and Mina at the cave entrance. The setting sun painted the sky with streaks of orange and pink, a rare beauty on this gray world. Elias shared a meal with them, sitting on the ground while Mina clutched a small piece of bread in her hands. "You've been very brave," he said softly to Leora. She nodded, understanding his meaning even without words. Elias realized that their bond was growing stronger, not just of survival but of friendship and trust. For the first time in his lonely life, Elias felt like he had a family. The days after Elias had first brought food to Leora and Mina passed quickly. The wasteland remained harsh, but something had changed. The cave that had once seemed so empty and cold was now alive with small sounds: the soft patter of Mina's footsteps, Leora's quiet humming-like calls, and the occasional laughter that Elias had never thought he would hear again. Every morning, Elias rose before the gray sun peaked above the horizon. He packed his bag carefully: water, rations, scraps of clothing, and sometimes small trinkets he thought might amuse Mina. Today, he also added a small mechanical toy he had found in a ruined supply depot. It had no purpose other than to spin and to make a clicking noise, but he hoped the child would like it. As he walked across the cracked plains, he kept his eyes on the ruins around him. Sometimes shadows flickered between broken walls, reminding him that danger lurked everywhere. Still, he thought of the mother and daughter, and that thought gave him courage. Humans were resilient, and he had survived here alone. He could survive, for them too. When he reached the cave, Leora was outside, inspecting a small patch of scrub that had somehow managed to grow in the barren soil. Mina was crouched behind her, poking at the dirt with a stick. The moment she saw Elias, she ran toward him, holding the spinning toy tightly. "Look," she cried in her soft, musical voice, which sounded almost like a bird's song. She handed him the toy, pointing to the part that spun. Elias smiled. "I see it. It works perfectly." Leora watched silently, her head tilted slightly. Over the past few weeks, Elias had learned to read her expressions, subtle shifts in her posture and the way her large silver eyes moved. He knew that today she was judging him, not with suspicion, but with curiosity, wondering whether he would be a true friend. Elias set down his bag and pulled out the food. "I brought enough for all of us," he said, arranging it carefully on a flat rock. Leora stepped forward, inspecting the contents. She nodded slightly and motioned for Mina to sit and eat. Elias did the same, careful to stay at a respectful distance. As Mina ate, Elias looked at Leora. She had a small scar above her left eye, likely from some past conflict. Her skin shimmered faintly, blue with silver streaks catching the sunlight. Despite her alien appearance, there was a gentle dignity in her movements. Elias wondered how many dangers she had survived before he found them. After the meal, Elias began repairing some of the tools he had scavenged. He worked quickly, his hands moving with the precision that only comes from years of practice. Mina watched, fascinated, leaning close to see what he was doing. "Teach me," she said. Elias chuckled. "You'll need steady hands and patience. he said. He handed her a small harmless piece of metal to manipulate. She clumsily tried, her small fingers fumbling, but she laughed each time she made a mistake. Leora watched silently, nodding approvingly at the child's determination. The afternoon passed in this quiet rhythm. Elias repaired a few broken devices. Mina played with scraps and Leora watched them both, alert for any danger but slowly relaxing in Elias's presence. There was a fragile sense of trust building between them, a delicate balance that could be shattered if something went wrong. Suddenly, a shadow moved across the edge of the cave. Elias tensed. He had seen such shadows before, scavengers, raiders, or wild creatures that roamed the plains. He stood slowly, making himself visible. "Stay back," he said to the aliens, and they obeyed immediately. A small group of scavengers emerged from behind a cluster of ruins, their eyes scanning the cave. Elias stepped forward. "This is not your place," he said calmly, though his heart pounded. "Leave or there will be trouble." The leader of the scavengers laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "And who are you? Some human protecting... what? Aliens?" His tone was mocking, but Elias noticed a flicker of uncertainty in the man's eyes. Humans were known for their cleverness and resourcefulness, and rumors of humans surviving alone in this wasteland often made even hardened scavengers cautious. Elias slowly reached into his bag and pulled out a small device, a flare with a mechanism he had repaired. With a flick, it shot up into the sky, releasing a blinding light and a shrill sound. The scavengers shielded their eyes, startled. "Get out of here," Elias shouted, "before you regret it." The group hesitated, then slowly retreated, muttering curses under their breath. Elias lowered the flare, his chest heaving. Mina clutched Leora's hand, wide-eyed. Leora looked at Elias, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then she moved closer to him, a gesture that meant something profound. She trusted him enough to show appreciation without words. That night, Elias slept fitfully, thinking about the encounter. The wasteland was not a safe place for Leora and Mina. They could not survive alone much longer. He had protected them today, but what about tomorrow? And the day after? He realized that bringing food was not enough. They needed a secure home, somewhere the harsh world could not reach them. The next morning, he packed extra supplies and prepared for the trek to the cave. But as he walked, he noticed changes in the terrain. The ruins had shifted slightly. Dust storms had covered familiar paths, and distant sounds hinted at more scavengers or wild creatures nearby. Elias tightened his grip on his bag. Survival was always a challenge, but he had learned that the human mind was clever, adaptable, and that adaptability could keep others safe too. When he arrived at the cave, Leora and Mina were waiting. Elias noticed that Leora had gathered a few pieces of scrap metal and string. She handed them to him, a gesture that seemed like an offering of trust and cooperation. Elias smiled. "I see you've been busy," he said. "Together, we can do a lot." Over the next few days, Elias worked with the aliens. He built small traps around the cave entrance to warn of approaching danger. Leora learned quickly, helping him set them up with precision. Mina was curious and mischievous, often testing the traps and laughing when they made unexpected noises. Elias found himself laughing along, a sound that echoed through the gray plains, like a small victory against loneliness. Their bond grew stronger. Elias noticed that Mina began to imitate his routines, collecting water in the morning, arranging supplies carefully, and even trying to repair broken items. Leora taught her new ways to hide and move quietly, blending her own knowledge with what Elias showed them. Together, they were becoming a small, resilient unit, a family forged not by blood but by trust and mutual protection. Yet Elias could not ignore the dangers of the world outside. Raiders, scavengers, and harsh environmental conditions were constant threats. One evening, as they sat near the cave entrance, watching the pale sun sink beneath the gray horizon, Elias spoke. "We need a better plan," he said. "This cave is not safe forever. One day it might not be enough." Leora's eyes softened as she considered his words. She placed a hand gently on Mina's shoulder, and the child looked up at Elias, sensing the seriousness in his tone. They understood, without words, that their fragile sanctuary was temporary. Elias felt a surge of determination. Humans were survivors. They could adapt, think, and plan. He would use every skill he had to protect these two beings, and perhaps one day he could offer them something even better: a home, a place where they would be truly safe. That night, as wind howled across the plains, Elias watched Leora and Mina sleep. The cave, once silent and cold, was now filled with small signs of life. A scarf draped over a rock, a toy left near the entrance, a tiny footprint in the dust. Each small detail was proof that their fragile friendship was growing stronger. And Elias knew deep in his heart that he would not stop fighting for them. Not now, not ever. The weeks passed, and Elias's routine became a lifeline, not just for him but for Leora and Mina. Each day he scavenged the ruins, brought food and water, repaired his small devices, and watched for danger. The mother and daughter were growing, stronger and more confident, yet Elias knew the wasteland was always unforgiving. Danger lurked in every shadow, in every whisper of wind. One gray morning, as Elias packed his bag to head toward the cave, a strange silence hung over the plains. Even the wind seemed quieter. His instincts pricked. Something was wrong. He arrived at the cave to find it unusually still. Leora was outside, standing rigidly near the entrance, and Mina clung to her side. Their silver eyes flicked toward him. As he approached, Elias noticed a faint trail in the dust, a series of footprints leading toward the cave. They were large and uneven, not human but heavy. Raiders. He had hoped they wouldn't return, but there was no doubt now. Elias's mind raced. He had prepared traps and alarms, but a direct attack would test them all. He knelt beside Leora and whispered, "We may have company soon. You and Mina stay close. Follow my lead and you'll be safe." The mother nodded, her hand brushing the child's shoulder. Mina's small fingers gripped her mother tightly, her eyes wide with fear. Elias felt a surge of determination. Humans were clever, they adapted, they survived, and he would use every skill he had to protect them. Elias quickly assessed the cave. He remembered the small alarms he had made from metal scraps and wire. They could alert him if the raiders approached too closely. He adjusted them, making them more sensitive. Then he found some old pieces of broken machinery, scraps he could use to make noise or distractions. Hours passed. The shadows lengthened across the gray plains. Elias sat with Leora and Mina, whispering instructions. He taught Mina to stay low and quiet, to watch for shadows before moving. Leora nodded and silently copied his gestures, as if understanding the plan without needing words. The first sound of approaching footsteps was faint, but Elias heard it. He froze. Mina clutched his arm, and he gently held her hand to calm her. The raiders were close. Elias whispered, "Stay behind me." The raiders emerged from the ruins, a group of 5, armed with crude weapons, their faces hidden by tattered scarves. Their leader, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, laughed harshly. "Well, well," he said, "what do we have here? A human protecting aliens? How interesting." Elias stood slowly, keeping his hands visible. "Leave," he said calmly. "There is nothing here for you," the leader sneered. "I think you're hiding something. Food, supplies, maybe something more. Step aside or we take what we want." Elias shook his head. "I said leave." The raiders advanced, but Elias was ready. With a flick of his wrist, he triggered one of his traps. A series of metal scraps clanged together, creating a loud, shrill noise. The sound echoed across the ruins, startling the raiders. They stopped, looking around in confusion. Elias seized the moment. He picked up a small flare and activated it. A bright light shot into the sky, spinning and whistling loudly. The raiders shielded their eyes, coughing as dust and sparks scattered. "Run!" Elias shouted to Leora and Mina. The mother grabbed her daughter, and the two moved quickly, guided by Elias. He had planned a path, a narrow channel between the ruins that led to a small depression in the ground. They could hide there until the raiders were forced to retreat. Elias led the way, using hand signals and low whispers. Mina followed closely, her small hands clutching her mother's arm. The raiders tried to follow, but the traps confused them. Metal scraps clattered, wires snapped, and sparks flew. Elias's clever use of the environment, fallen beams, broken walls, and loose debris, created obstacles that slowed the attackers. They stumbled and shouted in frustration. Finally, Elias reached the small depression. He crouched low, signaling Leora and Mina to do the same. They were hidden, nearly invisible in the shadows. Elias held his breath as the raiders passed by, their heavy footsteps and curses fading into the distance. When the sound was gone, Elias exhaled slowly. He looked at Leora and Mina. "You're safe," he said softly. Mina smiled weakly, relief washing over her small face. Leora nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude. Elias felt warmth in his chest. They stayed in the depression until night fell. The stars appeared above the gray wasteland, tiny points of light in a vast, dark sky. Elias knew the raiders would not give up easily, but tonight they had survived. And that survival had been a triumph of human ingenuity, the ability to think, adapt, and protect those who could not defend themselves. After a quiet night, Elias led them back to the cave. Some of the traps had been damaged, but the structure remained mostly intact. Elias spent the next few days repairing and improving his defenses. He showed Leora and Mina how to hide quickly, how to detect movement in the distance, and how to stay calm under pressure. Through this, the bond between them grew even stronger. Leora began to trust Elias completely, following his lead in ways she had resisted before. Mina, once shy and uncertain, began to imitate his movements, learning quickly. She watched him repair devices, set up traps, and manage supplies. In her small way, she was learning human ingenuity, the ability to survive through clever thinking, not just strength. One afternoon, as they sat near the cave entrance, Elias looked at the mother and daughter. "We've survived because we worked together," he said. "But we can't stay here forever. The world outside is too dangerous." Leora tilted her head, considering his words. Elias could see the wheels turning in her mind, planning, calculating, wondering what the next step should be. Mina, sensing the seriousness, clung to her mother, her small fingers brushing against Elias's arm for reassurance. Elias smiled gently. "One day, I want to give you both a place where you don't have to hide. Somewhere safe." The mother's eyes softened and she brushed her hand lightly against Elias's. It was a gesture of trust, of acceptance. Elias felt a surge of hope. Perhaps humans and aliens could truly understand each other, even in the harshest environments. Over the next week, Elias focused on preparing for the future. He scouted nearby ruins for more materials, built stronger alarms, and created hidden paths that could serve as escape routes. Leora assisted him, her movements precise and thoughtful. Mina, ever curious, learned quickly, helping where she could, and always observing. Elias realized something important. Humans were not just survivors. They were teachers, protectors, and problem solvers. And in this small corner of the wasteland, he had found a purpose beyond mere survival. He was teaching Leora and Mina not just how to survive, but how to thrive, even in the harshest conditions. One evening, as the sun set behind distant hills, Elias sat with Leora and Mina, sharing a meal of preserved rations. The sky was streaked with orange and pink, rare colors on this gray world. Mina laughed as Elias showed her how to open a sealed container without spilling the contents. Leora watched, smiling faintly, her hand resting on her daughter's shoulder. Elias felt a deep satisfaction. The wasteland was still dangerous, the raiders still out there, but they had survived another challenge. And each day the bond between human and alien grew stronger. For Elias, the lesson was clear. Humans were not just capable of surviving alone. They could protect, teach, and inspire life around them. And in the fragile trust of Leora and Mina, he had found proof of something extraordinary. That night, as wind swept across the ruins, Elias sat outside the cave entrance, looking at the stars. He thought about the future. He would not stop until Leora and Mina were truly safe. He would face any danger, solve any problem, and teach them everything he knew. Humans were resilient, yes, but humans were also kind. And kindness, he realized, could be a weapon as strong as any trap or device. The wasteland around them remained harsh and unforgiving, but within their small hidden corner of the world, hope glimmered. Elias had become their protector, teacher, and friend. And for the first time in a long while, he felt that tomorrow might hold something better, not just survival but life. The days grew longer, but the wasteland remained unforgiving. Elias, Leora, and Mina had survived another week of raids, dust storms, and near misses. Each day, their bond grew stronger, but Elias could not ignore the reality. The cave was no longer safe. The constant threat of raiders and the harsh environment meant that this fragile sanctuary could not last forever. Elias spent the early morning walking through the ruins, searching for materials and scouting paths to bring the mother and daughter to a safer place. As he walked, he thought about his outpost, a small but sturdy building he had fortified years ago. It had walls strong enough to withstand storms and small attacks, supplies he had scavenged, and a hidden perimeter to warn him of approaching danger. For the first time, he realized it could be home, not just for him but for Leora and Mina as well. By the time he returned to the cave, the wind had settled. Leora was outside, arranging a small pile of dried plants for food storage. Mina sat nearby, playing with a scrap of metal that spun and clicked like the toy Elias had given her. The sight of them warmed Elias's heart. He knelt beside the child. "Mina," he said gently, "I think it's time for a new home. A place where you don't have to hide, where you can play safely." Mina's large silver eyes widened. She tilted her head, uncertain. Leora stepped closer, her posture cautious but curious. Elias turned to the mother. "I want you both to come with me. To live at my outpost. You won't have to worry about raiders or storms. You'll be safe." Leora remained silent for a long moment. Elias could see the wheels turning in her mind. This was no small decision. For years, she had protected Mina on her own, surviving by her wits and instincts. The idea of leaving the cave, leaving the only place she had known as home, was difficult to accept. But Elias knew that human life offered advantages she could not ignore: safety, knowledge, and companionship. Finally, she spoke, her voice a soft hum that Elias could barely hear. I must consider. It is different." Elias nodded. "I understand, but I promise it will be safe. You won't have to struggle alone anymore." Over the next few days, Elias visited the cave more frequently. He brought not just food, but small comforts: a soft blanket for Mina, a water filter for Leora, and a few small tools that could make life easier. He also began to prepare the outpost, making it more suitable for aliens. He adjusted ventilation, created low resting platforms for Leora and Mina, and set aside a small storage area for supplies. Leora watched him work, sometimes helping, sometimes observing. Mina followed eagerly, trying to carry small items herself. The child's curiosity was endless, and Elias smiled at her determination. He knew that if Leora agreed, they could adapt to human life with patience and care. One afternoon, as the sun dipped behind distant hills, Elias sat near the cave entrance with Leora. Mina played nearby, spinning a small metal toy she had found. Elias took a deep breath. "Leora, I know this is a big decision, but I believe you and Mina will be safer with me. And you won't just survive, you can live, learn, and grow." Leora tilted her head, considering his words. She studied Elias's expression and body language carefully. She saw no threat, only honesty and care. Finally, she nodded, a small gesture, but filled with meaning. "We will come," she said quietly. Mina ran to Elias, her laughter spilling over like music. Elias scooped her up, holding her gently. "It's time for a new home," he said softly. The journey to the outpost was long but manageable. Elias led the way, carefully navigating the rough terrain. Leora followed closely, Mina holding her mother's hand. Elias kept watch constantly, alert to any signs of danger. When dust storms forced them to take shelter in a small crevice, Elias shared water and rations, showing them how to stay safe in the harsh conditions. By the time they reached the outpost, the sky was streaked with the colors of sunset. Elias opened the door and motioned for them to enter. Leora stepped inside first, scanning the space carefully. Elias had prepared it to be welcoming, but he knew it was still foreign. Mina skipped ahead, exploring every corner, her excitement contagious. "This is home?" Leora asked softly. "Yes," Elias replied. "Safe, warm, and yours too." The first nights were challenging. Mina had trouble sleeping, unused to the sounds and smells of human construction. Leora stayed alert, her instincts telling her to watch for threats. Elias remained patient, offering comfort and guidance. He taught them how to use the filtered water, how to store food safely, and how to navigate the outpost. Slowly, they adapted. Mina discovered a small library of human books Elias had salvaged and began learning words and pictures, fascinated by the stories. Leora explored the outpost, learning its systems and understanding the human way of life. She began to teach Elias a few alien skills too, ways to sense the environment, subtle movements to avoid danger, and techniques for observing the world. Quietly, the outpost became a place of learning and cooperation. Elias realized that humans were not just survivors, they were teachers. They could show others how to live safely and thrive, and the aliens, in turn, taught Elias new ways to observe and understand the world. Together, they formed a unique partnership. One evening, Elias, Leora, and Mina sat together outside the outpost, watching the pale stars appear in the gray sky. Elias looked at them both and said, "We survived together. We learned together. Now we live together, and that means we can face anything." Leora's eyes reflected the starlight, and Elias could see a flicker of hope. Mina, smiling, reached out to touch his hand. It was a simple gesture, but for Elias, it meant the world. He had offered them safety, and they had accepted him not just as a protector but as part of their new life. Days turned into weeks, and the outpost became more than a shelter. Elias, Leora, and Mina worked together to expand it. They built additional storage for supplies, reinforced the walls, and created small gardens that could sustain them. Leora showed Elias how to cultivate some alien plants that could survive in human soil. Mina helped wherever she could, learning quickly. Their bond strengthened, becoming unbreakable. Elias realized that humans were capable of more than survival. They could create life, foster trust, and build families, even in the harshest places. And for Leora and Mina, humans were not just strange beings. They were friends, protectors, and now family. One evening, Elias sat with Leora, sharing a quiet moment. "You were brave," he said softly. "You protected Mina all these years. Now you don't have to do it alone anymore." Leora nodded. She reached out and placed a hand on his arm, a silent acknowledgement of trust and gratitude. Elias felt a warmth in his chest, a confirmation that humans, with their courage and compassion, could make a difference. Mina, ever curious, peeked around the corner. "Elias, can we go explore tomorrow?" she asked eagerly. "Of course," he said, smiling, "but safely." That night, Elias watched the two aliens sleep, thinking about how far they had come. From a cave in the wasteland to a safe outpost, they had survived, adapted, and thrived. And Elias knew that the bond they shared was stronger than any danger the universe could send. The wasteland outside remained harsh and unkind, but within the walls of the outpost, a small family had formed. Humans were resilient, intelligent, and compassionate. And in this small corner of the galaxy, Elias proved it. Not through strength alone, but through kindness, courage, and the simple act of offering a home to those in need. For the first time, Elias allowed himself to hope, not just for survival, but for life, for family, for trust. And as the stars glimmered above, he knew that together they could face anything. The offer had been made. The aliens had accepted. And in doing so, Elias had created something extraordinary, a new family, forged not by blood, but by the human heart. The outpost had changed. What was once a small, solitary shelter on the edge of the wasteland had become a home, alive with laughter, movement, and life. Elias, Leora, and Mina worked together, their days full of routines, learning, and small adventures. The harsh world outside still raged, but inside the walls of the outpost they were safe. Mina woke early as she always did, eager to explore. The human childlike curiosity she shared with Elias was infectious. She ran to Elias's workshop, a small area where he repaired tools and devices scavenged from the ruins. "Good morning, Elias," she called, her small voice bright and musical. Elias smiled, setting down a wrench. "Good morning, Mina. Ready for today's lesson?" "Of course," she replied, eyes sparkling. She had learned quickly over the past weeks, picking up skills with surprising speed. Elias had shown her how to fix small devices, manage supplies, and even read simple maps. Leora, watching quietly, was amazed at how adaptable humans could be, not just themselves, but in teaching others. After breakfast, Elias led Mina and Leora outside. The wasteland stretched endlessly, but Elias had marked safe paths and built small barriers to protect them. Mina ran ahead, her laughter ringing in the air, while Leora followed more cautiously, observing every movement. "Be careful," Elias called. "The world is still dangerous." Leora nodded, trusting him. She had come to understand that humans were not only strong and clever, but also patient and protective. Elias had guided them through so many challenges already, and now they trusted him completely. The day passed in a mixture of work and play. Elias taught Mina how to plant hardy crops that could survive the harsh soil. Leora joined, showing her daughter how to use alien techniques to help the plants grow faster. Together, they transformed a small patch of the wasteland near the outpost into a thriving garden, a symbol of life amid desolation. As evening fell, Elias gathered them around a small fire. The stars stretched above the gray sky, glittering like distant diamonds. Mina held a small plate of food, while Leora sat close, her hand brushing her daughter's shoulder. "You see," Elias said softly, "this is what humans can do. We survive. We adapt. But we also protect, teach, and care for others. That is how we make a family." Leora looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting the starlight. "You have taught us much," she said quietly. "Not just survival, but trust, patience, life." Mina smiled brightly, leaning against Elias. "And fun," she added, her small voice bubbling with joy. Elias chuckled. "Yes, fun too. Life is not just surviving, it's living." The night was calm, but the wasteland remained unpredictable. Raiders still roamed the ruins, storms could strike without warning, and wild creatures wandered the plains. But Elias had built defenses, trained Leora and Mina, and created a small network of alarms and escape routes. They were ready, not just to survive, but to thrive. Over the following weeks, the outpost continued to grow. Elias repaired old machinery, built small structures for storage, and even created a tiny workshop for Mina to practice her skills. Leora helped him organize supplies and improve defenses using techniques she had learned from her species. Together, they transformed the outpost into a safe and efficient home. One day, as Elias was repairing a water filter, Leora approached with a curious device in her hand. "This is from our world," she said. "It can sense things nearby. It might help you detect danger faster." Elias examined it, intrigued. "Brilliant," he said. "Humans have clever tools, but combining them with yours, we can be even stronger." They worked together for hours, fitting Leora's alien technology into the human systems Elias had created. Mina watched, learning, asking questions, and occasionally testing small devices with a delighted giggle. Elias realized that humans were not only capable of surviving alone, they could teach and inspire life around them, creating a harmony that transcended species. One evening, as the trio sat outside watching the stars, Elias reflected on the journey that had brought them here. He remembered the first day he had found Leora and Mina, huddled in the cave, weak and hungry. He remembered the fear in their eyes, the trust that had grown slowly, and the dangers they had faced together. "We've come far," Elias said quietly. "From that cave to here, we've survived, learned, and grown together." Leora nodded. "Yes, and it is because of your kindness and your cleverness. We are safe because of humans." Mina leaned against Elias, her small hand brushing his. "I like our home," she said softly. Elias smiled, a warmth spreading through him. "I do too," he said, "and we'll make it even better, together." The next morning, Elias led Mina and Leora to explore further beyond the outpost. He showed them hidden paths, water sources, and small areas suitable for building shelters or growing more plants. Leora absorbed every detail, her mind working like a computer, calculating the best ways to use the environment. Mina darted ahead, full of energy, occasionally stopping to examine a rock or a strange plant. As they explored, Elias felt a profound sense of purpose. Humans were not only survivors, they were innovators, protectors, and builders of life. His ability to teach and protect had saved Leora and Mina, but it had also brought him a family he never expected. Returning to the outpost, they found small signs of life awaiting them. A patch of soil where Leora had planted seeds, a small pile of rocks that Mina had arranged like towers, and tools neatly organized in the workshop. Elias felt pride and joy. This was no longer just a shelter. It was a home, shaped by all three of them. The days passed in a rhythm of work, learning, and small joys. Elias repaired machines, taught Mina skills, and helped Leora adapt to human life. Leora, in turn, taught Elias ways to observe the environment, sense danger, and understand the subtle signs of the wasteland. Mina absorbed both lessons eagerly, becoming a bridge between the two worlds. One evening, as they gathered around the fire, Elias spoke. "We've faced danger, storms, and loneliness. But now, we have each other. That makes us strong. That makes us a family." Leora smiled, a rare softness in her expression. "Family? It is good." Mina clapped her small hands. "Best family," she exclaimed, laughing. Elias chuckled, feeling a warmth that no wasteland storm or raid could touch. "Yes, the best family," he agreed. The seasons changed, and life at the outpost continued to improve. They grew crops, built new structures, and even crafted small machines to make life easier. Leora and Elias worked together to improve defenses, combining human and alien techniques. Mina helped where she could, learning skills that would serve her for a lifetime. Through it all, Elias realized the true power of humans, not just strength or cleverness, but the ability to care, protect, and teach. That power had saved Leora and Mina. That power had created a family in the wasteland. One night, as they sat outside under the stars, Elias looked at the two aliens he had rescued. "You've taught me as much as I've taught you," he said softly. "Humans survive, yes, but they also build, love, and create life. That's what makes us strong." Leora nodded, her silver eyes reflecting the starlight. Mina curled against Elias, content and safe. The wasteland outside remained harsh, the dangers real, but inside the walls of the outpost, a small family thrived. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and loneliness, and emerged stronger. Elias smiled, feeling the weight of the journey lift. The cave, the raids, the long days of survival, all had led to this moment. A new family, united not by blood, but by trust, compassion, and courage. And as the stars shone above, Elias knew that together they could face anything the universe had to offer. Humans were resilient, capable, and full of heart. And in the hearts of Leora and Mina, Elias saw the proof. Kindness and ingenuity could build a home even in the harshest places. The outpost was no longer just a building. It was a symbol of life, hope, and the enduring power of humanity. And in that small corner of the universe, Elias, Leora, and Mina had found something extraordinary, not just survival, but a new beginning. For the first time in a long while, Elias allowed himself to hope, not just for tomorrow but for a lifetime. Together they would thrive. Together they were a family. Together they had shown that humans could make a difference, not just for themselves, but for those they cared for. Even across the stars,